are here with Melinda Wedzina from Vine Faith in Action in Mankato, and you've got an interesting path on what brought you here, because in a previous life, you founded and created something called Feeding Our Communities Partners, and we're just here to talk today a little bit about your experiences then in the community working with kids and meals, and also how that might apply in some ways to what you do now at what we'll call, it's an adult community center where you've got all kinds of activities for the older set.
Right. I kind of refer to this position as my Goldilocks position. I have been working in the Mankato nonprofit sector for over 15 years. Started off as a volunteer at Echo Food Shelf. And that's what really introduced me, A, to the community and the needs of the community, but B, to the hunger assistance sector. And it was through that volunteering and serving on their board that the idea for Feeding Our Communities Partners was started, and I was able to use those connections with Echo to find the right community leaders, people like Colleen Landkamer and Jessica Beyer and Wilbur Neuschwander-Frink and others to help get that off the ground. And so I spent about 7 years working on developing Feeding Our Communities Partners, getting the first board set up, finding locations, which Larry Taylor from Taylor Corporation was fantastic in hearing our story and then giving us some space within the Taylor Corporation buildings up in North Mankato. Finding funders like Greater Mankato Area United Way and Mankato Clinic Foundation, who helped us right off the bat and get that program launched with the help of a very special principal at Franklin Elementary, Les Kopendreyer, who many people know. That was really the start of Feeding Our Communities Partners and the pilot on that program, the Backpack Food Program, and launching that organization.
Can you talk a little bit about the mission, the need that you saw when forming Feeding Our Communities Partners?
Sure. The forming of Feeding Our Communities Partners came about because Second Harvest Heartland, the food bank up in the Twin Cities, used the Boston Consulting Group to do a study for the first time on the whole state of Minnesota, county by county, on how many meals were being missed. They couldn't be accounted for in income. They couldn't be accounted for through assistance programs like SNAP. So they labeled these as missing meals. These are meals that they didn't know how anybody would be providing them based on that data. And so we took that information for Blue Earth County and said, we have got to fill this gap. And that's how we were able to get, county commissioners at the time like Colleen Landkamer and Vance and Will and everybody involved on, it's time to get something started here to fill that missing gap. So that's where that really started from. And nonprofit organizations evolve over time. It's the same thing with Vine Faith in Action. When Vine was founded by Pam in 1995, the whole idea was to be a community organization that connected volunteers with those who needed the help. And it could be anybody with any kind of help they need. But of course, over time, it found that, the majority of people who needed help on a regular basis tended to be older adults. And so we have evolved Vine to be very focused on older adults. Same goes with Feeding Our Communities Partners. While it was originally started to be something that could help supplement meals across the whole spectrum of those who need it, there was an immediate focus on children. Because we knew kids, there was a good number of students in the Mankato School District, for example, who were relying on those free and reduced meals at school Monday through Friday. And they were part of the missing meals. Where were they going to get their food on the weekends? Where were they going to get their food on school breaks? And so that's where Feeding Our Communities Partners really started to focus in on that childhood hunger piece. And now that's their main mission, is childhood hunger.
And the Backpack Food Program, was that something that you saw as a model somewhere and brought to Mankato, or is that something you kind of started from seeing the need and creative thinking?
Actually, it was a model that I believe it was Katie Boone, who at the time was with Greater Mankato Area United Way, brought to us and said, hey, we've seen this model in other United Way communities. Could this be something that Feeding Our Communities Partners could bring to this area? And that's how that was started.
Okay, and explain just real briefly what that involved.
Oh, well, it involved looking at what these other communities were doing. So they were putting food, shelf-stable food, into children's backpacks on Friday. So, and when I say they were, I meant these programs were delivering food to schools on a regular basis. Teachers were putting that food into the children's backpack. Every community does it a little differently. Some were calling students down to the principal's office on Fridays to pick up their food and take it home. We looked at all these different models and said, okay, what do we like about these models? What do we dislike about these models? What could we do differently here to fit our community better? And one of the most interesting and most rewarding times of feeding our community's partners was bringing the right partners together on this. So we had school district representatives. We had individuals who work with the diverse populations in the school district. So Harbi Hassan, for example, was somebody I worked very closely with during that time. We brought in registered dietitians from Mankato Clinic and I believe Mayo at that time to help us. And we devised menus that would fit the population we serve. So for example, we tried to make sure we had menus of shelf-stable foods with the highest nutritional bang for the buck we could find. Again, shelf-stable foods are not always the easiest ones to find nutritious values, but that's why those dietitians were so critical to us. Kelly Kunkel from the Extension was involved with that, as well as Erin Gonzalez from Mankato Clinic at the time. And they helped us devise, we had, I can't even remember how many iterations of menus that we had, because we didn't want to give the kids the same food every weekend. So we tried to switch up the main entrees. They always had to have some fruit. They always had to have a main entree, some snack items and other things that were in there for that to get them through the weekend, to replace those meals that school was offering. And then we did things like a no pork menu to make sure we were being conscientious for those who are of Muslim faith and weren't eating pork. So we tried to make sure, and we had, gluten-free options. We had, different things that we could do for the many allergies that are out there for children and food restrictions. And that was a real labor of love with us. We were really concerned about stigma. And the models that were calling children down to the principal's office, for example, those kids, everybody knew. And we did not want to do that. So what we did instead was deliver the food directly to the classrooms using volunteers. And again, this program was community volunteer driven. We had volunteers who helped pack the food into bags. We had volunteers who helped deliver the food to the schools. Then we had volunteers who actually took carts and moved that food through the school hallways, classroom to classroom, to make sure teachers had it on Thursdays so that they could put it anytime into the students' backpacks on Friday. And, the elementary school teachers for sure were easily able to go into the lockers, put the food right into the children's backpack. We've devised programs for the older kids to make that easier over time. But we really looked at it from every angle when it came to trying to reduce the stigma, make sure nobody felt ashamed taking that food home. We had to work with the bus companies because some of the kids were so excited about the food they found in their backpacks on Friday afternoons that they would start eating it on the bus, and then there was trash, and there was, so we had to be very respectful of all of the different partners involved in this, and really trying to keep the children at the center of everything we did with that program. We consistently brought in partners who helped us make that program as respectful for the children and their families and as impactful as possible. So one of the things we also did is we never put any household income regulations on this program. We didn't want anybody to feel deterred from seeking the assistance. We also empowered teachers, school social workers, guidance counselors, and administrative staff to be able to call us and say, hey, is there a family that you think needs this program? We made the sign-up forms very easy for parents. And we tried to take all of the red tape out of this just to get the kids food, make sure it went home in their backpacks and that they were fed so they could concentrate on school Monday morning and not on having an empty stomach from over the weekend.
Yeah, because the worst barrier to learning is a hungry
hunger.
student,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.